Good day, everyone. Today, we will be conducting our reading circle number 7. I am Rashid Matba, your discussant.
Salas Republic.
I'm Sophia Abrahana, the connector.
I'm Shalendro Victing, the word guide.
And I am James and Elsa, the documenter.
In this chapter, it offers a deeper look into the ways human decision making is shaped far more by emotions, perceptions, and psychological biases rather than logical reasoning. Although traditional economics assumes that people behave like perfectly rational econs, the chapter demonstrates that real individuals often rely on feelings, habits, and internal narratives when making financial decisions. These emotional influences lead to predictable patterns of irritational behavior, which can be observed in everyday spending choices. By exploring concepts such as the sunk cost of fallacy, mental accounting, and opportunity cost, the chapter explains why people continue to invest time and effort into things that no longer benefit them, simply because they feel pressured not to waste what they already spent. The examples discussed, like unused but expensive clothing, uncomfortable shoes worn out of guilt, gym memberships kept despite never being used, or bottles of wine consumed as if they were free, reveal how people construct mental stories to protect themselves from the discomfort of loss. These stories create the illusion that past expenses can be redeemed through future actions, even when those actions bring no satisfaction or value. The chapter also uncovers how companies intentionally design pricing strategies that exploit these psychological weaknesses. Businesses like timeshare firms, Costco, and Amazon Prime rely on upfront fees because they know consumers will feel obligated to use their services more often to justify the cost. This clever manipulation of human behavior demonstrates that markets are not built only on rational decisions, but rather also on emotional vulnerabilities. In essence, the chapter encourages readers to recognize these mental traps and acknowledge how easily emotions can override logic. By becoming more aware of these biases, individuals can make more thoughtful, deliberate choices, avoid unnecessary losses, and understand the true emotions behind their spending habits. To start our discussion for today, I would like to ask our first question. What do you think is a sunk cost fallacy? And why do humans struggle to ignore sunk costs compared to econs?
So start. Yeah. So I think so sunk cost fallacy is essentially the phenomenon where someone is very reluctant or seems to can't find a way to course correct from their decisions or actions because they've already spent so much time and resources on, for example, this one dress, this one video game, this one thing that making that even though stopping from buying stuff like a dress or buying more games, for example, is essentially more beneficial, they can't because they've already they've already sunk in so much cost that in their minds they can't move away from it. And humans struggle to ignore like sunk costs because for them, and this applies essentially sa mga like wants natin, parang ang hirap mawala kasi parang in our minds when we're say purchasing something or doing something, we think to ourselves that yes, like this will like give me like benefits, like self-actualizing benefits, gives me happiness, it gives me joy. It probably it has useful benefits, like it can help me do stuff around the house. It can help me like uh be perceived more as, more educated than I would like to believe in myself. Yung parang ganun. So I think that's one of the reasons why humans have hard time struggling to ignore like sunk costs compared like sa mga like econs discussed in the book.
From what James mentioned earlier, the sunk cost fallacy is the tendency for people to continue a behavior or commit harm because iniisip ko naman, they have already invested resources, like time, money, and effort, even when continuing no longer benefits them. From the chapter, the line, driving to the game na pleasure, or playing tennis are mistakes no ego can make. They rightly treat some causes as relevant, but for humans, some cause linger. This shows that unlike econs who make decisions based only on future costs and benefits, humans let past investments emotionally influence their choices. To explain this further, an example I can give is like yung mga students who are burned out, but instead of taking a break that might actually help them, mas nafe-feel pa nila yung pressure to push forward so their past investment won't feel wasted. This reflects how humans and like econs let past let past costs influence present decisions. People feel that stopping would mean wasting what they already paid. So they continue, even if it makes them lose. Sa from the chapter, like Vince playing tennis despite pain, or the mother insisting her doctor already paid for lessons, are examples of how people let emotional accounting, guilt, and loss aversion override rational decision making. Basically, humans cling to some cause because it feels like avoiding a loss, even though the loss has already occurred.
So for me naman, yung sunk cost fallacy is the tendency to let past expenses, whether money, time, or effort, that can no longer be recovered. So even though these past costs are already gone and should no longer matter, people often let them influence what they choose to do next. So in economic theory naman, we have econs. So ito yung parang ideal or perfectly rational decision makers. So para sa kanila, sunk costs don't matter at all. So ang tinitingnan lang nila ay yung future cost and benefits kasi yun lang naman talaga yung parang may effect sa overall utility or happiness ng isang choice. Parang sinasabi dito na what's done is done. So, pero since sa ating humans, hindi tayo ganun ka-logical all the time. Parang we naturally dislike the feeling of wasting money or effort, and letting go of something we paid or feels like admitting we made a bad choice, and this triggers feeling like loss, aversion, guilt, and parang strong desire to justify our investment or yung mga nauna nating in-invest. So because of that, parang people often continue with decisions na hindi na talaga nagbe-benefit sa kanila. So kung kukonect natin to sa real life situation, para siyang it's like eating at a buffet restaurant and parang fino-force mo sa sarili mo na kumain pa kahit you're already full naman na. So, ang example siguro na mabibigay ko, sometimes after ng 2 or 3 plates natin, minsan full and satisfied na tayo. And we know we should stop eating. But then, titingnan natin yung plate minsan and think na sayang I paid, example, 900 and I should make the most of it. So even though the stomach is already hurting na, ifo-force pa natin yung sarili natin to get another plate just to feel that the payment was worth it. So by the end ng meal natin, sobrang uncomfortable na natin. And in reality, whether naka 2 plates or 5 tayo, yung 900 na yun is already a sunk cost na. So we can get it back. But because ayaw natin ma-feel na na-waste lang yung money, we ended up making a choice na magle-lead sa atin sa worst situation. So in the end, ironically, we harm ourselves even more because we keep spending time, effort, or money on something na alam naman natin na dapat una pa lang nilet go na natin.
For me naman, I agree with Sophia, no? The sunk cost fallacy is basically when people keep doing something just because they already paid for it, even if continuing no longer makes sense. Sa economics, some costs should be ignored because it's already gone. Like an econ nga, will just look at future benefit and future costs. But tayo mga humans don't do that because we get affected emotionally. Nafe-feel natin yung sayang moment. So instead of acting rationally, we cling to the past payment. That's the sunk cost fallacy in action. Humans struggle to ignore sunk costs because of this economic concept, loss aversion. We fear the emotional pain of losing more than the actual benefits we might gain by changing decisions. And since the money is already spent, we also forget the opportunity cost, the better alternative we could choose now. Econs would ask, which choice gives me the most benefit moving forward? While tayo naman mga humans asks, how do I avoid wasting what I already paid? That difference between econs and real humans explains why the sunk cost fallacy is so common.
To me, the sunk cost fallacy is a tendency to continue an action simply because resources, such as time, effort, or money, have already been invested. Even when it makes no logical sense to continue, economists argue that past costs are sunk, meaning they cannot be recovered. So, they should not influence future decisions. Rational decision makers rather, or econ, make choices make choices based only on future costs and benefits. Humans, however, often struggle because of emotions, guilt, and the desire to avoid feeling wasteful. When people invest money or effort into something, they form an emotional attachment that makes abandoning the investment feel like admitting failure or loss. This emotional discomfort pushes people to justify past expenditure by continuing the behavior, even if it leads to worse outcomes. For example, people force themselves to attend events they no longer want to go to simply because they paid for the ticket. Humans mentally keep score, and ignoring sunk costs feels like leaving an account unbalanced. This emotional burden strongly influences their choices, which is why the sunk cost fallacy is so common in everyday life. Decisions, in short, humans find it hard to ignore sunk costs because they think in emotional rather than strictly rational terms. Now, moving on to our second question. To you guys, how do examples like unused dresses, painful shoes, or gym memberships illustrate mental accounting?
I think these examples show like how, for example, yung gym membership una, if you were to say, I don't know, in a month, go about, or what, not in a month, in a week, you say you go to the gym for about 4 to 5 days. Usually, when you have a gym, usually if you go to the gym for, say, 4 to 5 days in a week, it'd be better in your mind when you do the mental account. Kuha ka na lang, like, ng gym membership, especially if it's, you do the math, it's pretty cheap to just take the gym membership. Well, let's say that it costs around 600 to 800 price range instead of like the average normal gym memberships that where I usually take to go to gyms, which is about 60 to 80 entry fee. That's parang example ng like mental accounting. For I guess for the unused dresses, I'm not a girl, so baka you know, the sa mga babae dito, they can say something about this. Pero sa painful shoes, but sorry, nawala ako bigla. So for the painful shoes, I think that siguro if it's like painful pero like aesthetic, like sabihin natin mga leather shoes, formal shoes, yung mga medium to small size pero gusto mo lang bilhin because you like how it looks aesthetically. And maybe if may kailangan kang gawin, sabihin natin for thesis defense, in your head, you will do the mental accounting of, let's say it costs about, what, 5K to 5 to 10K price range, diba? So it's very pricey. Pero in your head, you think, I'm gonna use this for like, say, in a year, about 60 days in 1 year, parang ganun. In your head, siguro sa akin na lang, for example, I'd say I got my money's worth, but I would have chosen something cheaper if the option was available. That's how like how I think about yung parang examples dito.
For me naman, examples like unused dresses, painful shoes, or gym memberships illustrate like mental accounting. Even if using the item makes them worse, they use it so the money they spend doesn't feel wasted. An excerpt from the chapter that captures this sentiment is humans cling to the purchase impulse after the money is gone. This shows that when someone insists on wearing uncomfortable extension shoes, a mental loss that must be relieved. People have this mentality na iniisip nila na sayang naman nagbayad na ako or like to use it para hindi masayang instead of making decisions based on comfort or current benefit.
So yung mga examples na to like unused dresses, painful shoes, or gym memberships shows how people create mental accounts na parang psychological budgets sa utak natin where we keep track of money na nagastos na. Kahit na hindi na natin mababawi yung gastos, we still feel pressured to balance or justify those accounts. So for example, sa dress na binili na on sale but never actually worn, usually just sits in the closet. But sa mind ng owner, parang it stays inside a clothing account as a kind of loss. That's why even if the dress parang hindi na siya maganda, pinipilit pa rin yung sarili nila to wear it just to feel the money wasn't wasted. So at that point, it's no longer about fashion na. It's about mentally recovering the cost. So for painful shoes naman, parang it worked the same way. Kasi alam mo na sa sarili mo na bad purchase yon. Minsan masakit na siya sa paa and sobrang uncomfortable na. But you still force yourself to use them because it was expensive. Parang wearing them feels like you're reducing the waste even though the discomfort makes you the whole thing not worth it. And yung gym membership naman, I think ito yung pinaka-popular sa example. And I also remember my friend din saying na nakabayad na siya ng gym membership, kailangan niya na yung gamitin. Kapag hindi siya na kakapunta, parang nagigilty siya. And take note, he's a nursing student din and expected naman na sobrang compact yung sked nila and minsan wala ng time. Pero iniisip niya pa rin yung money na ginastos niya na parang it needs to be compensated by forcing himself to go kahit wala na siyang time or wala na siyang motivation since ayun nursing student nga siya, but ayun in all of these situations yung mga upfront payment parang it creates a mental account that people feel obligated kahit na minsan wala na talagang real benefit sa kanila, instead of making rational decisions based on what's good for them. Parang they allow past expenses to dictate their actions kahit masama na yung outcome.
So, how do examples like unused dress, painful shoes, or gym membership illustrate mental accounting? So, this example show mental accounting, which means people separate their money into emotional accounts instead of treating money as money. For example, Joy's mental dress account feels negative if Cindy never wears the dresses. Even if the money is already a sunk cost, she still forces Cindy to wear them because she wants to balance the mental account. It's with the same with painful shoes. People force themselves to use them just because they're expensive, even if cheaper shoes would hurt less. Gym membership also reflect mental accounting. When people pay the fee, they feel They must go often because the membership account needs to be justified. The author even mentions payment depreciation, where people go more right after paying, but slowly stop as the psychological pressure fades. This shows how mental accounting makes people treat prepaid expense differently from normal ones, even if the money is already gone.
To me naman, these examples show how people use mental accounting to justify past spending. Mental accounting is the way humans create imaginary accounts in their minds to track expenses, benefits, and losses. When Joyce buys dresses for Cindy, she feels guilty when Cindy refuses to wear them because the dress account feels unbalanced. Even though the money is already spent and cannot be recovered, Joyce feels that Cindy must wear them to avoid wasting the purchase. Similarly, when someone buys expensive shoes that turn out to be uncomfortable, they often try to wear them repeatedly just to justify the price, even though this causes pain. This behavior shows how the desire to close the mental account overrides rational decision making. Gym memberships also illustrate this idea. When people pay for a membership and fail to use it, they feel that skipping the gym means the money is lost. So they push themselves harder to attend more right after paying the fee. So cost is fresh in their minds. Over time, as the payment becomes mentally distant, their motivation fades again. All these situations show how people use mental bookkeeping to avoid feeling that their money was wasted, even when doing so leads to rational choices. Moving on, let me ask our third question of the day. Why do people feel that using something they paid for helps cancel out the cost? And how does this influence their behavior?
I feel like when people, I mean, parang ginamit yung mga items na binili nila might help cancel the cost kasi nandun na eh. Parang ginagamit, I mean, I'm using it right now. Therefore, I'm getting my money's worth. Or I'm using like, sabihin natin like, Netflix or YouTube Premium subscriptions and I'm spending time with them. I feel like I'm getting my money's worth because, I'm getting entertainment in that case. And that influences their behavior kasi, you're helping, I mean, in a sense, parang you're helping yourself pay down the cost by, you know, paying the money with something you're already using, which is time in, yung oras mo. Kasi, say your, excuse me, say that something is, for example, a phone, di ba? I mean, I don't know the parang because kasi like latest phone costs for smartphone, especially mga flagship items ng Samsung, iPhone, Huawei, somewhere around ballpark of 100,000 max, parang ganun. I think to us, we see that parang if you see that the 100,000, usually you think, well, you either pay it full time or take it down in installments. Usually you pay it down in installments. Ang isip mo at na-influence sa behavior mo kasi, if I'm able to like use, this is also like a measurement in pag sa gaming, but it's not that common, where if I'm using this smartphone for X amount of hours, I'm paying off, say, it's 8 hours. I'm paying off, say, 80 to 800 pesos. Ano, 800, I'm paying off 80 to 800 pesos from those 8 hours. Or if you're playing a game, I'm, I've, let's say a game's like 12 hours of play time. Wala siyang replayability. Let's say it's a single player game, like 12 hours. If the game costs about 40 to $50, then ang thinking kasi doon, you got about $4 and 17 cents for every hour of game time. You were just single player now. Now, in that the game thing, it's kind of irrelevant especially coming from people that just, or kapit lang, that just play games because usually, hindi mo na naiisip yung ganun, di ba? You don't think about that consciously, but unconsciously, in your heads, you think that, for games and smartphones and whatever we use to cancel out the cost naman, I think we see that as like parang normal behavior, but you can also see how that also gets in again or comes in again to some cost fallacy kasi parang iniisip natin na or unconsciously iniisip natin na I need to use this to pay off the cost. And then once that cost is done, whenever I use it again, that's when I can attain parang like true enjoyment or like true joy in what I'm using, right? Parang ganun. Yung parang the material that I'm having, that I'm using right now, whether it's permanent or parang temporary lang, I'm getting the true enjoyment after I've paid it down with time, yung parang cost dun in a sense. I mean, that's what I think.
For me naman, people feel that using something they paid for helps cancel out the cost because they rely on mental accounting. The idea that they track expenses in an internal ledger. When people use a product, it feels like they are getting value back and reducing the psychological weight of the payment, even though the money is already gone. A line from the chapter explains this directly, which is what we think of as the cost of consumption is almost entirely determined by the arithmetic of our mental accounts. This shows that people don't think about costs rationally the way economists do. Instead, they look at their own mental ledger and try to balance it. That's why people attend events they no longer enjoy, forcing themselves to use a gym membership or wear something uncomfortable. Using the item feels like it offsets or cancels out the payment recorded underneath.
So for me naman, siguro, to answer your question, kasi parang people often treat money they've already spent as an investment na rather than yung sunk cost. Kaya parang nararamdaman nila na kung hindi nila gagamitin yung product o service, sayang naman yung pera na ginamit, di ba? So, itong sunk cost fallacy na to, it can really influence yung decision making natin na madalas pinipilit natin gumawa ng choices na hindi naman talaga for our own benefit. Katulad ng example lang kanina sa pag-overeat sa Eat All You Can buffet to get money's worth kahit hindi naman talaga ganun kagutom or like parang manood ka ng movie na hindi mo gusto kasi nabili mo na yung ticket, di ba? Ganon. Similarly din sa person na fina-force yung sarili niya to attend a gym session na they don't feel like doing or continue a failing project like sinabi ni Pat kanina because of the time and money na ininvest nila. So yung parang psychological driver behind this is yung behavior na loss aversion, where the emotional pain of feeling like money has been wasted is stronger than the rational benefit of stopping or changing the course. So, yung tendency ng past expenditures, which should be irrelevant to current decision natin, can irrationally shape behavior or often leading to unnecessary effort, stress, or overspending. Kaya parang mas nafe-feel ng tao na i-cancel out yung cost.
Me naman, I agree with Pat kanina na people feel that using something they paid for cancel out the cost because of loss aversion. We hate the feeling of losing money. So when we don't use what we paid for, it feels like we're taking another loss emotionally. That's why using the product gives a sense of parang bawi, even if using it doesn't actually recover anything. This thinking is tied to the mental account people open whenever they buy something. This feeling strongly influences behavior. Instead of making a choice based on the future happiness, people try to avoid guilt from a negative mental account. That's why they attend concert in storms, wear uncomfortable clothes, or finish bad meals. This desire to avoid some cost pain makes people choose things that are not actually good for them. It's a clear conflict between rational decision making and emotional decision making. That's all.
Moving on, my take is that people feel that using something they paid for cancels out the cost because it helps them mentally justify the purchase and avoid the emotional discomfort of loss. This comes from the way humans track expenses in their minds. When people is spent on something not used, such as a concert ticket or a pair of shoes, it feels like the loss becomes real and undeniable. But when the item is used, even if the experience is unpleasant, it creates a sense of psychological closure. This mental balancing act makes people more willing to force themselves into actions they no longer enjoy. For example, someone might attend a concert during a storm or continue wearing shoes that hurt just to avoid admitting the money was wasted. This behavior extends to larger decisions too, such as sticking with a failing project at work or continuing a relationship because of the time invested. The desire to get their money's worth influences people to keep going, even when stopping would be healthier or more rational. Of course, lastly, people use consumption as a way to erase the feeling of lost value, allowing them to avoid guilt, but often leading to worse outcomes in the long run. Moving on to our fourth question of our meet today. How do businesses like timeshares, Costco, and Amazon Prime take advantage of people's tendency to treat upfront payments as investments?
Um, wait lang. Upfront payments as investments. Okay. Think one way where how some of these businesses can see that, parang yung bayad mo is more like an investment sa, say, entertainment, or in the case of timeshares, parang you're, or in the case of timeshares, right, parang like, you're owning your house little by little just by paying it down through the years. Parang mortgage ba in a sense? Yeah, mortgage, like a mortgage in a sense. Hmm. I think the one way where they try to take advantage of that is, well, for Costco and Amazon Prime, parang like through subscriptions. Because if I'm really seeing this right, parang upfront investments as like upfront payments as investments, I'm thinking about usually parang subscriptions nowadays. And one way where they take advantage of those is like, parang yung library ng shows na ako mo. Or not just like library, parang all the like library shows, more in-depth, I guess, sales para sa, for Amazon, like as normal. And for like Costco din, parang yung memberships din nila where you just get this, you can just go to like any, like, because it's in the US, like Costco is like one of the top three supermarkets. Supermarkets in the US. So if you get the membership, whenever you see like a Costco nearby, you can use the Costco membership card to get like a discount for it. That's one way where they can take advantage, is the perceived benefits or overwhelming benefits na makukuha mo sa like mga subscriptions nila, or instead of just not paying the full amount upfront, you just pay it down like little by little, parang sa timeshare, you're paying it down month by month, and then as you're paying it month by month, you gain, parang yung humble abode mo or yung bahay mo little by little. But that's That's a bit longer kasi mahaba kasi yung like time frame of timeshares. Now, maybe ano, that would sa sinabi ko kanina like about subscriptions, especially dun sa Amazon Prime. Siguro mas gets mo pa yun if you're somewhere in the world of 2019, 2020, nung mura pa yung mga subscription. But nowadays, especially with inflation or aggressive inflation, I would say, it would be the cost of if you're to look at like Amazon Prime and maybe also with Costco memberships, maybe I don't live in the US, but maybe lang for Costco. But for Amazon Prime, it's the cost right now is more it's more you might as well be like as expensive or more expensive if you just bought parang cable TV or parang bumili ka ng mas mura pa nga bumili pa ng GMA Digibox para sa mga channels nila than trying to get a subscription for Amazon Prime or whatever subscription service there is right now. It's more expensive because of inflation, aggressive inflation in a sense. Pero just to parang summarize lang, parang the way they can like the subscriptions like are like the way where they can take advantage of parang upfront payments mo as like an investment. Again, you are paying for like time para sa timeshare. In a timeshare's case, you are paying for a long time to gain as little by little parang ownership ng bahay mo. But you're also like, pagka pabayad mo na, nakuha mo na yung bahay mo. And yes, although sa Amazon Prime, especially if you're trying to watch something on a show in Amazon Prime, you're geo-locked. You don't get as much content and prices are just as expensive with cable TV. You still see it as an investment because you're still paying it down first. You paid it down for so long. Parang sunk cost na nga rin na inis mo na lang even if I abandoned it and even if I just stopped paying for it, I just went to another service or just start pirating in general. I've already spent so much. I don't think I could ever like abandon this right now. Maybe at another time. Yun ang palagi iniisip natin. You're kicking the can down the road again. Parang I'll do it again some other day and that other day never comes. Parang like take ko dun.
For my take naman, like businesses such as Timeshare, Costco, and Amazon Prime take advantage of prepayment plus yung minention natin kanina na mental accounting. Like parang pag nagbayad ka ng mahal na subscription sa Netflix, you start to treat that payment or that subscription as an investment that must be recovered. Because of this, like parang mas nape-pressure ka to keep using the service to get your money's worth, even when the benefits no longer match the cost. An excerpt from this chapter explains this trap through the idea that payment depreciation does not happen overnight. This means that people feel the weight of the cost most strongly right after paying. Ginagamit din to ng mga companies as an advantage, like yung sa Costco memberships. Costco memberships encourage customers to shop more often because they mentally want to recover the membership fee. Like, according sa tita ko who lives in America na may Costco membership, bumibili siya ng grocery for this current month. Kahit madami na silang pagkain na binili from Costco like last month. Kasi baka daw masayang yung membership. And for Amazon Prime naman, like Amazon Prime makes customers buy more frequently or choose Prime options so that the annual fee feels like justified. Parang in short, businesses know that once people have prepaid, they will overconsume to avoid the psychological pain, feeling like nagsayang sila ng pera.
So for me naman, I agree sa sinabi ni Pat. Siguro expand ko na lang. Sa timeshares kasi, madalas kailangan magbayad muna ng malaking upfront cost. Minsan years in advance pa nga. So, kahit na yung paggamit ng property becomes inconvenient or expensive, nararamdaman ng mga owners na kailangan nilang pumunta kasi malaki na yung na-invest nilang pera. So, this creates a strong sense of obligation to get their money's worth, even if it's no longer enjoyable or practical. Sa cost ko naman, parang it exploits this tendency through its annual memberships fees. So, yung customers parang nafe-feel nila yung pressure to shop frequently to justify the cost of membership, which often leads them to purchase more items than they originally intended, increasing overall spending. Sa Amazon Prime, siguro similar lang since yung subscription dito is parang yearly, I think, basta yearly subscription. Parang yung subscription na to is parang ina-encourage yung members to maximize the value of their subscription. So uh so people often order more products than they would without the membership. Parang mas namomotivate sila sa idea of getting their money's worth. So, underlying principle ng mga example na to is that these businesses capitalize on mental accounting and commitment na once consumers spend money upfront, they feel psychologically compelled to use the service or product, which drives increased consumption and boosts the company profits. So this strategy highlights then how behavioral biases can be intentionally leveraged by businesses to influence consumer behavior.
So for my take naman, this businesses take advantage of the sunk cost fallacy by making people pay upfront. When the cost is paid first, customers feel pressure to keep using the service to avoid the emotional pain of sayang. For example, timeshares charge a big upfront fee, so every vacation afterwards feels free. This causes escalation of commitment, where people keep using the product to justify their big investment, even if better options exist. Costco and Amazon Prime do the same thing. When people pay a membership fee, they feel obligated to shop there more to make the payment worth it. The upfront payment creates a mental investment account, and customers feel guilty if the account looks negative. Economically, the membership fee is already a sunk, but because of mental accounting and framing, people think they have to use it more. These companies cleverly use behavioral economics to lock customers into continuous usage.
Uh, for my answer, businesses like timeshares, Costco, and Amazon Prime cleverly design their pricing strategies around people's tendency to treat upfront payments as investments rather than expenses. When customers pay a large upfront fee for a timeshare, they mentally label it as a long-term investment rather than a cost. This makes every future vacation feel free, even though the initial payment was essentially prepaying for future use. Costco and Amazon Prime use a smaller but similar strategy. Their annual membership fees create a psychological commitment. Once customers pay the fee, they feel motivated to shop more or order more frequently to make the membership worth it. This behavior increases loyalty, purchase frequency, and overall spending, even when alternatives might be cheaper. The upfront cost becomes a sunk cost that encourages customers to return repeatedly so they do not feel like they wasted their investment. These companies benefit from consumers' reluctance to mentally assign a fee to every purchase, meaning people rarely calculate the true cost per item. By framing the payment as membership or investment, businesses trigger the sunk cost fallacy and keep customers engaged. This strategy works because it aligns perfectly with how humans mentally justify their spending habits. So that is all for today for our reading circle number 7. Once again, I am your discussant, Rashid Matba.
And Patrisalas, your commentator.
I'm Sophia Abrahena, the connector.
And I am James and Elsa, the documenter.
And I'm Shan Kabigting, the word guide.